The wind arrived first, low, restless, and sweeping across the open prairie like a warning whispered too late to be heard. Thick, unrelenting snow followed, swallowing the land in a white shroud until the sky and earth blurred into a single frozen horizon. By the time the stagecoach appeared on the distant trail, it looked less like a vehicle and more like a stubborn shadow pushing against the gale, its wheels groaning under the weight of ice and time. Inside, she sat rigid, her gloved hands clasped tightly in her lap as though holding herself together required a physical effort. The faint warmth trapped within the carriage did little to soften the cold that had settled deep in her bones hours ago. Every jolt of the wheels echoed through her body, but she did not complain. She had learned long ago that discomfort, like loneliness, was something to be endured quietly. Her name was rarely spoken with kindness, and even now, alone with her thoughts, she did not say it aloud. Instead, she focused on the letter folded carefully inside her coat, pressing it through the fabric for reassurance. The ink had faded from being read too many times, but the promise it carried remained vivid: a home, a husband, and a future where she would no longer be the extra chair at the table or the afterthought in a crowded room. She closed her eyes, picturing a place where she would be wanted, not merely tolerated, wanted. The carriage lurched and slowed. The driver's muffled shout reached her through the storm. They were close. Her breath caught, a fragile mix of anticipation and fear. She instinctively smoothed her white dress, the one she wore beneath her heavy coat. It had once been elegant in its simplicity, now it carried the creases of travel and the marks of melted snow. Yet she clung to it as a symbol of a new beginning. "This is where my life begins," she whispered, her words barely audible over the howling wind. When the carriage finally stopped, a heavy silence followed, broken only by the storm's relentless breath. She sat suspended between her past and an uncertain future until the door swung open. Cold air rushed in, sharp and unforgiving. She gathered her skirts and stepped onto the frozen ground, gripping the carriage for balance. The town was smaller than she had imagined, a handful of wooden buildings standing stubbornly against the drifts. Eyes found her almost immediately. Figures lingering beneath awnings fell silent, their expressions flickering from curiosity to something sharper, judgment. She lowered her gaze, feeling their stares like cold fingers pressing against her. He would come soon, she told herself. He would see her and everything would be right. A man stepped forward from the far side of the street. He moved with purpose, tall and composed, a figure of stability. Relief surged through her. He stopped a few steps away and looked her over slowly. His gaze held no admiration, only calculation. Her stomach tightened. I, I've come, she managed, forcing a small smile. "You're not what I ordered." The words cut through the air sharper than the wind. Her smile faltered instantly. The sentence felt misplaced, as if it belonged to someone else's story. "I am sorry," she whispered. He exhaled with visible irritation. "The description was clear," he said, his tone clipped and impersonal. "You don't match it." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Heat rushed to her face despite the freezing temperature. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a rejection. "I am the one who answered your letter," she said, her words stumbling. "I came all this way." "And I won't marry you. And I won't." The finality in his voice left no room for dignity. Someone laughed softly. The whispers grew louder. Too much, too big, too wrong. The letter in her coat suddenly felt like a cruel joke. "I don't understand," she whispered. There's nothing to understand, he replied dismissively. This arrangement doesn't suit me. He turned away, his interest already gone, leaving her standing in the snow. Wait, she called out, but he kept walking until he disappeared into the muted shapes of the town. She stood frozen as the snow began to settle on her shoulders and hair. She had nowhere to go. The realization was devastating. Where do I go now? She murmured to the empty street. No one answered. The town watched, but no one intervened. She looked at her white dress, now a damp, heavy burden. She began to walk, each step heavier than the last, heading toward the edge of town where the buildings gave way to the open, predatory storm. Come with me. The voice was low and steady. She stopped and turned slowly. He stood apart from the others, broad-shouldered and rooted deep like the earth itself. Snow clung to his dark, curly hair. His gaze was intense, but it wasn't mocking. You don't belong out there, he said. Suspicion flared in her, born from years of disappointment. Why? She guarded. He held her gaze, unflinching. Because you deserve better. The simplicity of it unsettled her. Better. No one had ever used that word in reference to her. She searched his face for mockery, but found only a quiet steadiness. In that suspended moment, she realized that while this wasn't the life she had been promised, it might be the one she had been waiting for. She took a small, uncertain step toward him. The journey to his ranch was quiet. The town was quickly swallowed by the whiteout, leaving only the rhythm of their footsteps. Do you always do this? She asked. Taking in strangers? No, he replied. Then why me? He didn't respond immediately. Because you ignited it, he said eventually. It was a restrained answer, but it felt honest. The ranch emerged from the storm, a modest, sturdy house surrounded by weathered outbuildings. It wasn't grand, but it was alive. Inside, the air was warm. He added a log to the fire and gestured toward a table. There's food. It's not much, but it's warm. You live alone, she observed, noting the absence of any unnecessary decoration. Yes. You don't have a family? He straightened, his back to her. I did. It was a long time ago. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. She woke early, helping where she could. He never asked her to, but he never stopped her. He showed her how to tend the animals with a patience she had never known. He never raised his voice, and he never looked at her with the judgment she had come to expect. Why don't you say anything? Why, she asked one evening by the fire. About me? Uku. He frowned in confusion. What is there to say? There's always something to say, she laughed humorlessly. He studied her. I don't see a reason to. As time passed, the ranch became a sanctuary. One afternoon, she found herself laughing, a sound so genuine it startled her. It suits you, he said quietly. The compliment struck deeper than any insult ever had, but hope always came with a cost, and her fear remained. You don't have to stay, he said one morning. She froze, the sting of potential rejection returning. I mean it. You're not obligated. Do you want me to leave? She asked. He hesitated, and in that silence, her old fears rushed back. I understand, she said, her voice trembling. That's not what I meant, he countered, struggling with his own vulnerability. I just don't want you to feel trapped. I've never had the luxury of feeling trapped, she replied sharply. The tension between them tightened like a pulled wire. That evening, watching the snow, she whispered to her reflection, "You'll leave me too." He heard her but didn't interrupt. He realized then that she wasn't afraid of being alone. She was afraid of being discarded. The next storm gathered slowly. The silence between them grew heavy. "I can't stay here waiting for you to decide," she finally said. "I'm not asking you to wait." "But you're not asking me to stay either." He had no ready reassurance, only hesitation. To her, that was enough of an answer. "I think I should go," she said. She gathered her belongings, her movements precise and final. He didn't stop her because he didn't know how. When she reached the door, she murmured, "I meant what I said about leaving before someone leaves me." She opened the door and vanished into the blinding white. The silence that followed was unbearable. The room felt hollow. Then, the realization hit him all at once. He lunged for the door, shouting, "Wait!" into the gale, but the wind swallowed his voice. He searched until his lungs burned and his limbs grew numb, but the snow had already erased her tracks. She was gone, and this time it wasn't because of rejection. It was because he hadn't given her a reason to stay. Weeks passed. The ranch felt like a punishment. He stopped justifying his silence and finally admitted what he had lost. Driven by restlessness, he rode into town. He didn't expect to see her, but there she was. Standing near the edge of the street, her posture stronger, her presence changed. Their eyes met and the noise of the town faded. He stepped forward. "I've been looking for you," he said. "I didn't ask you to," she replied, her gaze cautious. "I know. I needed to. I should have said it sooner. I didn't help you because you needed it. I helped you because I couldn't watch you walk away. I was afraid of losing you, so I said nothing at all." The simplicity of the admission carried more weight than any apology. "Why now?" she asked softly. "Because I finally understand that silence costs more than saying the wrong thing. You weren't someone I saved. You were someone I needed, and I was too afraid to admit it." She stepped closer, not all the way, but enough. "Fear doesn't disappear overnight," she cautioned. "Trust doesn't either." She studied him one last time, weighing the truth in his eyes. Then she reached out and let her hand find his. Her grip was tentative, but it was real. The snow began to fall again, softer this time, as if the world had decided not to bury what had broken, but to give it the chance to begin again. This is the Heart of the Frontier, brought to you by Dustin Hart Western Tales.